Okay, in this video I would like to talk about cultural Hegelianism because I will use my brand new slate to kind of illustrate the purpose of this channel. This is an image of a very simplified image of human consciousness. Hopefully you can read. Let us imagine, that's not really how it is, but just to illustrate that the scale of human consciousness goes from 0 to 100, beyond its divine consciousness. 10, 20, 30, etc. Up to the highest level. Let us say that the vast majority of people belong in the between 10 and 30. These are the majority of ordinary people in the West, but throughout the world. And their ordinary consciousness is filled either with religious views in the non-Western world, where people are still religious, or in the West, if they are atheist or vaguely Christian, they are aware of modern pop culture, and modern pop culture is worldwide. There's not an access to the internet everywhere, but in countries like Asia, Africa, Arab countries, depending on their level of prosperity, they have an access to internet, so they can be aware of modern, mostly American pop culture. So this is the ordinary level of consciousness, and this is the structure of Hegel's encyclopedia, which is actually the encyclopedia of being. We have logic and mathematics, which are one, then the realm of nature, which is physics, chemistry, biology, and then subjective spirit, which is all dealing with psychology, consciousness, anthropology, etc. Objective spirit, which is the realm of institutions, law, politics, economics, sociology, geopolitics, history, etc., etc., and what is absolute spirit, namely art, religion, and philosophy. We'll just check yeah, that's okay. Yeah, that's an illustration. And what is called the red pill process, mostly in the Western world, it is what people refer to as a reference to the movie The Matrix. Let us say that they learn here about conservatism, libertarianism, or patriotism. No, maybe that's why. Nationalism. In this sphere you have conservatism, patriotism, nationalism, anti-globalism, race realism, IQ, all this kind of stuff. And here in these realms higher, you have the resurgence of European spirituality. Already here we have a connection with Evola, people who are discovering Evola, traditionalism, paganism. It's only in the Western world. In the other parts of the world, they have religion daily, but in the West, it's a process upward. This really simplified to the utmost, just to illustrate. And here, I would say, we have sometimes popping here and there people with a very high level of consciousness about the divine, spirit, etc. But these people are what are in ordinary consciousness represented as the enlightened beings. They can be of any race, any part of the world, any religion. They are spiritual people, they are awakened people, so to speak, but they have somehow stumbled upon awakening. They are in very high regions about the truth of being and of God, even if they do not necessarily talk about God. They can speak about spirituality, the consciousness of being, whatever. But these people, these mystical or spiritually inspired people, they for a reason that I do not yet understand, they go from a low level directly to a high level without going through all the steps. So they are enlightened immediately, so to speak. Whereas what happens in the Western world is that people go out of what is called the normie world, the ordinary consciousness, and step by step they elevate themselves. Here you can have Trump, Ron Paul, Molyneux, Stephen Molyneux. Here you have the alt-right, Jared Taylor, etc., etc. And here you have the more spiritually enlightened people like the pagan, what I call the pagan community, etc., etc. And to illustrate what happened to me, I've already told this story countless of times on this channel, but I realize that maybe now it's more intelligible if I represent a picture, that I have climbed the ladder intellectually between 2016 and 2018, and the God experience that I talk about often in August 2018 is when I became aware of being what I call reason, namely the consciousness of the totality. That's what I call my God experience. I believed that I had become God. Actually, I was, but it was not the real God. It was a moment in the process that which Hegel calls reason. And ever since this moment, even before, but during the year 2018, 2019, and the beginning of 2022, I have spent most of my waking days, and even when I sleep, I also think about this, but when I'm awake, I live, so to speak, intellectually, I live here, in the level 90, 100, with Hegel and Philip K. Dick, also a little bit of Evola, but mostly Hegel and Philip K. Dick. And the kind of ideas which are developed by these two authors, Hegel and Philip K. Dick, are so far removed from basically everything under 80, but actually, how should I explain? They are so far removed from ordinary consciousness that's the reason why my channel has not been a quantitative success, although I have made hundreds of videos. It's because I just realized this recently, that I lost myself in these spheres. I lost myself in the mind of Hegel, which is actually partly my own mind, which is the mind of God. So I lost myself here, and I fail to communicate with everything below. But I have just recently understood that the idea of cultural Hegelianism, which I developed in around May 2018, was precisely, I did not understand, I just stumbled upon the idea, but I did not understand all the consequences, was to unite philosophy in the form of Hegel, religion in the form of Evola, and art in the form of modern pop culture. So it was the connection between the level of very high level of consciousness and the dominant consciousness of the majority of the population, mostly not necessarily Western population, but all those who have access to modern pop culture. So the purpose was to be the connection between these level of consciousness and these level of consciousness. But actually I later realized that the people who have no access to Western culture in poor country, they have a religious consciousness, but this religious consciousness is identical with this one, which is identical with philosophy. So the more I lost myself in these very high spheres, actually the more I understand the whole picture, basically. That's just an illustration. So yeah, I lost myself in the mind of God, with which I identify my own mind. So I lost myself in my highest mind, and now I have to go back to the ground to make my truth intelligible to everyone. I have understood this. So I make this video to say that I have a few videos to produce to clarify certain things, but then I will be true to my own concept, to speak like Hegel. I will develop cultural Hegelianism as it was meant to be, namely I will use modern pop culture to express religious and philosophical ideas. But now I have much more intellectual experience, namely I am capable, not completely, I'm still rather ignorant, but I can express the truths or some truths of religion or art or modern pop culture. Art and modern pop culture is just a particular, modern pop culture is a particular aspect of art. Now I can translate much more adequately the truths of absolute spirit, which are also the truth of logic, nature, and objective and subjective spirit in a philosophical language. So I know myself that I can partly at least make the truths of religion, whether this is the mysticism of Viola or ordinary religion, and the truth of art, whether it's classical art or modern pop culture, intelligible in the language of philosophy. Yeah, that's the illustration. And when my current followers watch this, although it's kind of messed up, but my mind is also a little bit messed up, you might understand why you don't understand most of my videos, and in the future when I will have more subscribers, they will understand the process that I have gone through. And yeah, it's kind of a difficult story, but if I wanted to make a positive remark, I'd say that it is only by getting lost sometimes in your own mind that you can eventually recover your own mind and improve, hopefully. So yeah, that's what I had to share in this video.